Welcome back to another episode of Home Service Headquarters. Today we welcome on Chad Cooke of Cooke Pressure Washing. Chad is a solo entrepreneur who's been in the pressure washing game for 5 years. Stick around for the interview to learn how to start your own pressure washing business, some industry trends, and possibly even hear the answer to a potentially embarrassing question from me that Chad gave us an answer to. Let's hop into the interview. Welcome back to another episode of Home Service Headquarters. Today we welcome on a special guest, somebody I have been able to work with kind of through the main job for over a year now. Somebody who's knowledgeable in all things service business, but especially pressure washing. Chad Cooke of Cooke Pressure Washing. Chad, how you doing today?
Good, man. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. I've learned plenty from watching you on YouTube, little clips and things from watching the videos. Now I'll get a direct source from the man himself, and hopefully people can take some things from it as well. Just to
Yeah.
start off, give us a little bit of an introduction to you, as much personal history that you want to give, maybe a career history, and then leading into where you're at now with Cook Pressure Washing.
Yeah, absolutely. So a week after high school graduation, I shipped straight out to the military, went straight into basic training. Got out of the military, went into sales because, what else are you supposed to do when you get out of the military? Did sales for a little while, went through 3 company acquisitions. So the companies kept buying the other companies out. And the salespeople are the first to go.
Yeah,
So I was out of a job and I was pressure washing my fence. And I was like, you know what? I'll do this. And that's how I got into the business, and I've been doing it for 5 years now.
that's crazy. One acquisition, you're like, that kind of stinks.
Yeah, yeah, I
Then
know.
you're like,
Yeah.
all
Bad
right, give
luck,
me a
dude.
break. Three, you're like, all
Yeah,
right, I'm taking this
yeah,
into my own hands. I'm not doing this anymore.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
So growing up, maybe some less so into high school and things, was pressure washing something you did like as a side gig, or you just had, your own setup kind of for your own home and went from there?
Back in high school, I'm old now, but it seems like pressure washing, it wasn't even a thing, but I'm sure it was. You know what I mean? Not like now where you see a bunch of high school kids doing it. So, no, I never even thought about it till way later on in life.
Yeah, that's interesting. And to me, and we'll talk about it a little bit, it seems like maybe not the simplest service business to start up. Like I think more so other service businesses will probably yell at me for this, but I feel like there's a little bit more knowledge that you have to kind of have before you just get started. Chemicals, pressure amounts, all sorts of different things that we can dig into. Um, so that's a cool story. Starting with maybe just that learning that you had. So couple different jobs, not going great through circumstances completely out of your control. Pressure washing kind of pops into your head. Did you take any formal steps to learning YouTube University or anything like that? Or did you just kind of get started and learn?
Man, there's always something to learn about absolutely anything. And pressure washing, although it may seem simple, like you just spray water and that's it, right? But you almost have to be a scientist
Yeah,
because there's a lot of chemicals involved and you could damage a lot of different things. A lot of YouTube and a lot of mistakes made the hard way. That's how I learned.
that makes sense. And 5 years in, obviously, none of those mistakes could have been too catastrophic to have you still be running a successful business. So
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes you can learn those lessons the hard way and still be in a
yeah.
good spot on the other side. That's awesome. We'll probably dig more into some of the specifics, like I mentioned, because I am curious. And even for me, who is pressure washing adjacent in my career, I know very little. I probably know the most that I do from watching your videos and other
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
YouTubers who do similar things. So I'd love to dig into that. About your business now, specifically, do you have employees? What's your kind of setup? Where are you located, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I'm a solo owner operator. I don't have any employees at the moment, located in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Gotcha. We'll maybe talk about growth too. Is there any on the horizon? Have you ever thought about adding an additional truck, an additional employee, subcontract, anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's such a difficult thing too. To what's the tipping point? Is there a you know?
Yeah, that's the gray area. What is the tipping point? I'm running myself into the dirt now, but what is the tipping point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, And then maybe we'll have you a couple years from now back on. We could talk specifically because you could go on for hours about business growth and that moment that you trigger it. So, I'll be watching,
Absolutely.
I'll be monitoring, and at that point, maybe we'll have you back on, and we'll talk about that specifically. All right, the most important question I think I have ever prepared for a podcast. I have specifically not Googled this because I knew we were doing this for a few weeks. Can you
Mm.
break down the difference, if there is any, between the term pressure washing and power washing?
Dude, I don't and pressure and power washing, I think it's just terminology. I don't think there's very much of a difference. Now, I could be wrong. I haven't Googled that either, so I have no idea. But to me, I've always looked at it as that's just different terminology, like search terms. If
Yeah.
somebody wants power washing near me or pressure washing near me, it's almost one and the same.
I feel better that that's your answer, because if there was a
Yeah,
major
yeah.
difference and I didn't know it, now I feel better. If you don't know it, then it's probably minuscule if it is. Uh,
No.
with
Yeah.
that specifically, was that a decision that you made when you're starting your business to go with pressure versus power?
I think, you have people who refer to it as power washing and then people that refer to it as pressure washing. I referred to it as pressure washing, so I said Cooke Pressure Washing.
Yeah. I just wonder if
Yeah.
it's like industry specific, like if some certain industries, like you're on the East Coast, I'm in the Midwest, like if one is more common
Right,
than the other.
right,
That'd be
right.
interesting too to look at, like just Google search terms as well. Like for anybody who's watching this and is thinking about starting up your business, maybe a little quick tip that we didn't even know we'd land on is do a Google search in your area, pressure versus power, and see which results in more searches, and possibly find a little niche there to rank on Google a little bit higher.
Yeah, so I did that, right?
Okay.
And it was higher on pressure washing, so I guess
Sure.
more people refer to it as pressure washing.
Right.
Although, I do have keywords and stuff like that in my website to rate for both. But yes, I don't really know that there's a difference between pressure and power washing.
Love it. That makes me feel better. I was anxious to ask this question.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it would have been a large egg on my face if you were like, you don't. There's a major difference in between the two. So I feel
No,
better off the
no.
rip. I'm glad I got that out of the way. One that I do think, but I also don't know for certain, is the term soft washing. Is there a actual difference in between pressure or power washing and soft washing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't know what soft washing was either when I first started. I thought it was all pressure
Yeah,
washing. Soft washing refers to the method of cleaning, which really the only thing that I use pressure on is concrete, and that's lowered pressure with high volumes of water. So
sure.
soft washing is lowering your pressure either with your unloader on your machine or a tip on the end of your wand. There's a million different ways you can do it. And then letting the detergent do the work. So you don't want to go and wash your house and just blast away at it. Then
Yeah,
you're going to be buying somebody some new siding.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So this probably is as good of a time as any to dig into what we were mentioning earlier, the chemical aspect of your
Uh-huh.
job. You mentioned YouTube. Was there a first place to start? Is there a most common chemical used? Like what did that process for you as you're just getting started look like?
Yep, sodium hypochlorite, right? Big word. It's
Yeah.
bleach, right? And so even with that's like organic growths on houses and roofs and stuff like that. But there's your perfect example. The percentage of sodium hypochlorite you would use on a house is so different than you would use on a roof.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, like, for example, on a house, you're looking at about a 1% that'll clean up all that algae and all that green stuff on the side of the house. On a roof, you're looking at more 6%. Now, if you do one or the other, right, it's not going to be effective on a roof at 1%. And at 6% on a house, you're going to burn everything up that is surrounding that area, all that vegetation.
Sure. So
That's what I
1%.
mean by yeah, that's what I mean by being a scientist almost like,
I see,
it's
see.
not as simple as people think.
Right, totally. And that mistake, especially for somebody who owns their own business or is thinking about starting their own business, you make a simple percentage mistake as you're mixing, when you get to the job site, and that goes from a profitable job to a major loss. And maybe one of those learning moments we talked about trying to avoid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So would you say, if in arbitrary breakdown, your day to day, what percentage is pressure washing and what percentage is more in the soft washing category?
Yeah, so the majority of the time it's gonna be a house in a driveway, right? So a house, obviously self-washing. On a driveway, my machines, right, I have 2 Siamese, that's 9.5 gallons a minute, but I lower the pressure to 2,500 PSI. Again, you don't wanna be blasting away at the concrete and just destroy the concrete because that's very expensive, you know what I mean? And that's concrete that's been there for years. Any new concrete, you gotta lower that pressure way down or you'll etch the concrete.
It would not the time to put your name on something for marketing, which might be my best ever professional podcasting transition there. Marketing is a big hot topic basically for people like yourself, small business owners, and we even touched on ranking in Google and things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe starting with just as you got started, where did you start from a marketing perspective on how to get your name, how to get your business's name out there?
Yeah, door knocking, man. I know it sucks, but I was literally door knocking with door hangers.
Sure.
And other than that, to get your feet off the ground, you really have to do some work for free to kind of show proof of work. Family, friends, stuff like that. Just do a couple jobs, get a couple before and after pictures, then ask them for referrals, anybody that they would know that would need the service done. And that'll get you going. You know what I mean? But you're going to have to put in some footwork to really get started.
Yeah, and that's I think one of the coolest things about a service business. Like you can go from a sales job to pressure washing your feds to excuse me, making a mental turn where you're like, I might do this. And the only real difference between starting and where you are now, there's more than that, but is hard work, both,
Mm.
door knocking and getting out there, and then the hard work of also, having to learn a lot about your trade, uh, which is cool. I bring it up probably every time I do a podcast across any industry, but it's one of the coolest things about home services is really the difference between success and failure is,
Mhm.
and that is an awesome
Yep.
thing. Pretty much everybody we've had on here is a testament to that, hard work at the beginning that starts to, get going and kind of, spirals upwards, if you will. So door knocking at the beginning, put miles on the boots. Anything since then, kind of in that in between phase or where you are now that you do from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, so you have to have your name everywhere, right? So social media, still do door hangers, but it's called a 5 around, right? So if I do a job, I'll have a door hanger that actually, dude, I have one right here.
Let's go.
These right here.
Got
So the 5 houses around the house that I'm already washing, right?
it.
I'll look the day before I go and pre-quote them for all or any of these services and put it on their door. And, yard signs, social media, Google ads, Facebook ads, all that stuff. You gotta have different avenues. You can't really just depend on one or else it's not gonna work very
Right.
great.
You're gonna dry up and then you're gonna be back to
Yeah.
knocking
Yeah.
on doors first thing
Yeah,
Monday
yeah,
morning.
I don't wanna do that. Yeah.
That's awesome. So the fiber out, that's super cool. I've never heard of that. Now, my wife and I just bought a house a little over a year ago, so we're probably coming up on that time where we might get a little fiber round going.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that common? I had never heard that type of thing. Is that something you kind of thought of, or is that something you had heard from somebody else?
No, yeah. I had heard that from a YouTube video from another guy who has a pressure washing company. I was like, dude, that's a great
Yeah,
idea.
that's
You know
right.
what I mean? You already have it pre-quoted, then you don't have a price objection. You already
Yes.
have it quoted for them. If they call you, you're ready. And if you did a good job on the neighbor's house, it's a win-win.
Right.
You know what I mean?
One quick text to the neighbor, "Hey, do you have Chad? What
Mhm.
blanket did you
Yep.
think you need? How long did it take?" All those,
Yep.
calls you might receive. You have a satisfied, hopefully satisfied customer that's fielding all of that. That's got to be like the warmest lead you can
Yes,
possibly get.
exactly.
Plus,
Exactly.
they're driving by after picking up the kids or whatever, and they see you actually out there doing, that just adds that barrier. They see you, they know who you are, you do a good job, all those types of things. You mentioned a handful of other ones, Google Ads. We could also probably spend an entire podcast on. Uh, it, there's probably 10 podcasts being recorded around the nation about that same thing. So we won't dig into that. But
Yeah.
across all the marketing tactics or marketing ideas you mentioned, you know of one that's the most effective method for you? Yeah.
Referrals and word of mouth, man. That's the easiest and most effective.
And referrals is another great topic. Is that something when you start out your day or when you get to your first job site of the day that's front of mind right away is how can I get that referral or
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah,
working towards
absolutely.
it?
Yeah, the easiest way to do it is do a stellar job. You know what I mean? If you do such a good job and you know, there's it's a no-brainer for the person that you're doing the job for them to be like, "You know what? My cousin needs their house washed," or, you know, "My brother." That happens all the time.
And when you are doing that, do you have is it built into your process when you're, taking payment or whatever? Is there something that you kind of just have rehearsed almost to mention, hey, a review really helps me out type of thing?
The reviews, yeah, so that's like pulling teeth, getting a review. You're talking about Google reviews, right?
Yeah, wherever that's another good question. Where do you kind of house your reviews? I know there's Google, Facebook, Yelp, different
Yeah.
things.
So, I'll answer both questions I think you were asking. So referrals, yes, I would always ask them for a referral. You know, if you we're in the South, so it's a bit more relaxed. I'm like, hey, if you know anybody else that would need my services, just have them give me a call, and that's it. As for Google reviews, it's like pulling teeth, which I understand people are busy, but every single one of my customers, before I leave, I'm like, hey, would you mind leaving me a review if I texted you a link? And they're like, absolutely. 2 out of the 10 might do it, but I text every single one of them the review link for the Google My Business.
I love that. And I have stats on it, 4.9 stars on 132 Google reviews. So even if that's, 2 out of 10, and that, like we were talking about with referrals, that makes that referral process much easier to be able to
Yeah,
just say, hey,
yeah.
like I obviously had a good experience, but there's 131 other people who also had a similarly good experience as well. Uh,
Mhm.
that's awesome, and I know reviews are kind of the lifeblood. You mentioned referrals are probably a number one, and reviews probably go with that. The better job you do, the more reviews you get, the more referrals, and it all probably funnels in um, as well. Awesome, well, that's incredible. Switching back a little bit, I've mentioned a few times your first day. If you were to pick out the biggest difference in the industry or even in your business specifically from day one when you started to today where you're at now, does anything come top of mind?
Yeah, dude, my equipment. So I started out of the back of a Honda Pilot with a Home Depot pressure washer.
Okay.
I'd have to drag that thing out every single time. And I'm telling you, a small patio might take me 3 or 4 hours. It was awful. So, you know, I've reinvested back into the business and I've upgraded my equipment. That is a huge difference from day one to now.
Feel like you're going from like a squirt gun to a fire hose after after
Yes.
these years.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Yes.
probably a big thing too, is just, you're investing in the business, but now you're also becoming more profitable. You're doing those same jobs quicker. You're able to do a better job with better equipment and all those types of things.
Yeah. Efficiency is key. Right.
Right. Yeah. Especially when, doing a good job and being efficient, you can charge less and they're happier when they're paying less and you're getting more reviews and it's all kind of that funnel we talk about. Awesome. Incredible. Similar question, taking you back to that first day. If you could talk to yourself that first day as you set out to do some door knocking, what's the one piece of advice you would give yourself now as you're starting your business?
Knock on more doors. You're gonna need it. You're gonna need it. So, you know, if you say you need 100, right, you're probably gonna get 1 or 2 jobs out of that, maybe. So, you know, I yeah, that's what I would change. I'd probably knock on more doors and hit the ground running a little harder. But I also was trying to learn the business correctly before I went out there and just did a bunch of crap work. You know what I mean? My name's on my shirt, my side of my truck,
Yeah.
so I don't want to ruin my name. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it becomes all that more serious, especially like you mentioned. It's just you right now. So it's your business, but
Hmm.
it's also, you. So uh that makes a big difference for sure. Uh More specific, and you did a video kind of recently on this, but what is the dirtiest job that you have ever done or the dirtiest type of job that you can do?
It's always the heavy equipment, man. No matter what, there's stuff all over my face. if I don't wear these. If I wear an outfit, I have to throw it away before I even get in the truck because it's so ruined. It's so greasy, all the mud caked up, but it's yes, it's always the heavy equipment.
Okay. And is that a job that you do often? Do you find yourself, you know, getting a lot of calls for heavy equipment?
Yeah, absolutely, and I love it too. It's the dirtiest, but I love it. I'm
Yeah.
not even sure why, but I do love it.
Getting the dirt more than under your fingernails, under your eyelids
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
at different
Yeah,
points.
absolutely.
Alright, that's a hey, if we're gonna take one tip away, pressure washers or power washers, before you hit heavy equipment, go grab a shirt from Target or Walmart, depending on what part of
Yeah,
the nation
yeah.
you're in. Put it on, don't wear the nice stuff, chuck it before you get back in the truck and call that quits. Yeah.
I'd buy the rain suits from Lowe's,
Oh,
you know, like the cheap ones, and
yeah,
I'd put that on
and you're
and then
dry.
just chuck it. Yeah, exactly. And
Okay,
then because wet socks suck. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, I would just put that on, wash the heavy equipment, and chunk it.
that's good. That allows you to maybe even do more jobs because if you're doing one without that rain suit, that's probably it for the day. You're not going out for the rest of the day with those wet socks,
No, no,
soaked
no,
outfit. You gotta stop
no.
home. Awesome. Industry in general. I already asked my embarrassing pressure versus power question in general. And you mentioned equipment a little bit. Maybe that's part of the answer. But are there any industry trends you've noticed that are becoming more popular, either on the business side or on the actual washing side?
You know, there's so many different things that go on in this industry that it would be hard to even touch on one certain thing. Like there's always different types of equipment coming out. Um, one like industry trends in regards to equipment would be something along the lines of a Flow Pro, right? Which if you're washing a house and you have your tube and the bleach, right? If you're doing one side, you would usually have to walk back to the truck to take it out and put it in the water so you don't just keep spraying bleach, or you could change the tip. The Flow Pro just has a remote that you push and it switches it for you. So I see a lot of things like that popping up within the industry. Anyone starting out, you know what I mean, as you reinvest, stuff like that is a time saver and it saves your back and your legs and everything. I feel like a baby when I don't have that because it's awful. You know what I mean?
How long have you had that piece of equipment?
2.5, 3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, I found that out pretty quickly and I
Yeah,
jumped on
right.
that pretty quick.
You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And how did you learn about it? Were you just like we mentioned a bunch watching YouTube or the magazines or different things that you can kind of keep up with?
YouTube. It was
YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah, another washer had it.
And if you're looking for somebody who can get you these things, check out Chad. I'll link it in the YouTube description. Hopefully, send some people your way and find you the same way I did. Maybe they'll have some more applicable learning as they're starting their own pressure washing business themselves. Day in the life. We've talked a lot about day in the life kind of back then, door knocking, small equipment to where
Uh-huh.
you're at now. What does a regular day look like from you? Any regular weekday, kind of starting your day and through the end.
Yeah, I'm all over the place, man. So like it would be one thing one day and then another day. But standardized, wake up, get all quotes done that I didn't get done the day before because remember, it's just me. I got 1,000 things to do. Respond to all the quotes, head to the first job, usually house or driveway. Do a couple of those. Sometimes I'll go do gas stations at night. Sometimes I'll do heavy equipment throughout the day. There's really no set like routine for me because it's always different, which is, as you own your own business, that's the great thing about it is you're never going to go into the same plant and do the same thing every single day. So I love it. You know what I mean? It's different every single day.
Do you have a favorite job? I asked dirtiest job, and that might be the same answer. Is there a favorite, whether it's house, roof, driveway, heavy equipment, anything?
Yeah, so heavy equipment and just vinyl houses are the easiest. Well, heavy equipment's not easy, but houses are the easiest once you get the hang of it and you know the process, the correct way to do it. It's seamless. So that would definitely be my favorite.
Is that kind of like the bread and butter? Would you say that's the majority
Yeah,
of jobs you do?
yeah, yeah.
I've been watching. I've been now I go outside to look at my house. I'm like, I got fly chat up here. I got to get my stuff cleaned because
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
starting to look bad. Might not be the most cost effective. I might have
Yeah.
I might have to
Yeah.
find
Definitely.
somebody in my area who's doing a little bit better. Awesome. Well, before we wrap up here, we'll hit some of our regular segments. We call them. First being, can it side hustle? Can you start pressure washing on the side as you're, either kind of looking to transition or looking for some extra cash? Is it something that you can side hustle?
Absolutely, and I would encourage it, especially if you already have a job and you're not like me without a job. If you have a job and you're thinking, I want to start a business, start a pressure washer, I would say do it as a side hustle first because you may absolutely hate it. It's not as
Yes.
fun as people make it look.
Yeah.
It is laborious, and again, there's so many variables in the business that make it difficult. So yes, you can do it as a side hustle.
As you're getting started, you already pretty much detailed every tip. Start with friends and family, doing some free jobs,
Hmm.
getting the hang of it. Watch YouTube,
Yeah.
learn, because there's a lot of mistakes you can make. Try and carve out
Yeah.
as many
Yep.
of those mistakes as you possibly can. And maybe hopefully, it starts as a good side hustle and it can kind of become, something like what you have without the pressure then of, being where you were and having, to dive full in. That was an unintended pun there with the pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully they edit that out. That's rough. Hit or miss, rapid fire. Hit or miss, accurate, miss, disagree. I mean, we can dive in. Hit or miss. This is a fun one. You can start a pressure washing business for under, let's say, $500.
Hit. You can go rent one at Home Depot, make the money from that job, and then go buy one.
How
Yeah.
expensive, typically, ballpark is a starter water fed pole or whatever the most essential equipment is?
Dude, it's been so long since I shopped at Lowe's or Home Depot
Yeah.
for a pressure washer, but I'm pretty sure you can get them for like, 3, 4, 500, something like that.
Sure. And another one that comes up often from just Google searching and watching YouTube is you need a truck. Obviously, we already answered that question. You might not need a truck
Mm.
right away, Chad.
No, you don't.
As long as you can fit it or break it down, however you gotta make it happen, you can.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And that lends the answer to the next question. I think we kind of answered it, but you need a full setup, water tanks, full kit to get started.
Miss, no, you don't.
We're talking to living proof that you can build it successful with a little bit of boot equity, putting your boots on the ground, knocking doors, and getting started from there. There's another fun one we kind of touched on. Doing a good job or word of mouth is all the advertising you'll need for your business.
Now that's not a hit or a miss,
Yeah.
that's an in between because you need as much as you can get. I know folks that have a successful business just from word of mouth, but, you really need to have all different types of avenue because, word of mouth is just here and there, really. It's not a consistent thing. I guess it could be, but I would encourage marketing on all different types of avenues.
Kind of depends on area and things like that. So for anybody
Yeah,
watching, the key
yeah,
takeaway is probably start there, learn a lot, and then
yeah,
understand,
yeah.
kind of where you can allocate those funds. Hit or miss, it's necessary to get hands-on training before buying the equipment or starting with your first job.
Hands-on, no, but YouTube the crap out of everything, man, because like I said before, not as easy as it looks. There's so many different things that go in on the back end of running a pressure washing business and the actual work itself. That's not as simple as most people think.
Totally. I said it off the top too. It seems so simple, right? Like you're spraying some pressurized water, you're taking off growth and whatever that is, but maybe more than other industries. I'm sure I'll get a little flack. We'll have arguments in the comments, but it seems like there is more to this industry than others. So it might not be as simple as, just getting started, but we're also in the age where that information is readily available. You're putting up
Right.
videos that can answer some of these questions for people, weekly, monthly, things like that. Hit or miss, business specific here. When you're starting out, you need to undercut pricing of your competition to succeed.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that. No, you don't. But like I said before, you're gonna have to do stuff for free or likely cheap starting out to get your name out there. But again, if you do your research before you start, you'll know that if you do charge cheap prices, you're gonna lose money and your business will not succeed or withstand, a couple years.
Also run the risk in my mind of kind of being pigeonholed as like the really cheap.
Cheap guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then, you're kinda stuck in that pricing, you're losing jobs and things like that, so,
Mhm.
um, yeah, like you said, there's ways to get around it, starting friends and family, doing it cheaply, and maybe communicating like, "Hey, I'm just getting started out, and these are
Yeah, yeah,
kind of the
yeah,
types of
exactly.
things." Awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate it. Last thing before we wrap up, I mentioned it a little bit, where can people find you and support you?
Cook, pressure washing everywhere, Cook with an E. TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, all the things. You can just search Cook Pressure Washing.
So many of these things, so many of these questions that we've answered. A lot of them I asked knowing that you just answered these recently on a YouTube video. So Google Cook or Google Cook Pressure Washing, YouTube Cook Pressure Washing, whatever it is. I know you're really great about too. If there's like a specific comment or something like that, put it in there, and Chad will more than likely either respond or do a cool video if there's multiple people asking those types of questions as well.
Yeah, man, I love people helping people out because I didn't have any help. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So any knowledge that I do have, I am more than willing to pass along and help anyone out. I love to do it.
awesome. Last thing then. One piece of parting advice. If you feel the need to get on a soapbox and make this non-business, feel free. I think you're a person that I would listen to for those things. But one piece of advice you want to leave people with.
You're gonna have to work harder than you think. Yeah. So when you first start out, really hit the ground running after you've done your research.
I love it. That's perfect. You're a guy who's worked hard, so that's from somebody who's done it. No better answer there. Chad, I can't appreciate it enough for hopping on with me today. We will talk soon, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.